And now we're going to go through, actually I'll leave the text in here, and then do count to get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so we're going to do ing words. So you want to paste, I have the whole chapter pasted in here right now. Whole chapter 24, first draft. And I'm going to look through it and see how many, just kind of scan through it, see how many times I use ing words. And then I'm going to want to go through and see which of those are part of phrases and which ones I can change. So the best way to use this function is to find when you've abused ing words. Like here's a whole bunch of them in a row, and so I want to make sure that they're actually needed, and make sure if they're part of phrases that I can just simply change it to an ed word, or the whatever the simple past of that word is. And if you're writing in the present, then it would be the simple present. So Zoe left the dressing room, so in that case it has to be there because it's called a dressing room. She ran into him in the lobby right before giving up hope of finding him. So it could be she ran into him in the lobby right before she gave up hope and found him. But I like this better, so I'm keeping it. Wait, not and found him, right before she gave up hope of finding him. But giving up hope, so it's better that way. So all these happen in dialogue, so they would all stay. So for example, here could be, he bobbed his head to the music, pretending not to hear her. Could simply be changed to, he bobbed his head to the music and pretended not to hear her. But what you want to do though is make sure that it doesn't change the idea that you wanted, the image that you wanted. So he bobbed his head to the music would be like while pretending not to hear, but you can just remove while, pretending not to hear her, or as he pretended not to hear her. But that's retarded. I don't like writing like that. I don't like using the word as very often, because then it forces you to use the pronoun again, as he pretended. So this way, just pretending. So the difference here is that he bobbed his head to the music, pretending not to hear her, and he bobbed his head to the music and pretended not to hear her. There's a slight difference in meaning there. This one has, he's pretending not to hear her while he's bobbing his head to the music. With and, he bobbed his head to the music and pretended not to hear her. You can kind of think of it as sequence. Now most people probably read that as happening at the same time, but they might read it as he bobbed his head to the music and then pretended not to hear, as if one happened after the other. But most likely they're going to read it the same. So I can probably get away with just changing, he bobbed his head to the music and pretended not to hear her. But then another thing I want to look at when deciding something like that is look at the surrounding text and see, maybe I want to look at conjunctions and see how many times did I use the word and, for example, in that area already. And then go back to ing words. And then lastly, I want to read a before and after a little bit and see what flows better. And I'm actually going to leave it. Now this one here, cars drove between massive buildings lining the street. Sometimes I don't like sentences like that because I often write sentences where I use free modifiers with a comma, where this is referring back to the subject. So he bobbed his head to the music, pretending not to hear. So the music is not pretending not to hear. That's why there's a comma there. And so pretending is going back to the subject. I often write sentences like this, and so if I write a sentence like this, and people get used to the structure throughout the writing, they come across a sentence like this, even though the comma's not there, the brain might immediately try to associate lining the street back to cars. Cars drove between massive buildings lining the street. That is, the cars lining the street rather than the buildings lined the street. Either way, I guess, kind of works, but if I change it to cars drove between the massive buildings that line the street, now it's the buildings that are lining the street. Okay, and it also helps me remove, because I don't like to use too many ing words, but I really don't like those structure of sentences. I try to avoid them because I use these ones so much. So it's really like the psychology of it. I don't want people to read the sentence wrong. We have to do a double take. Just finishing coating her lips in rose red, Elizabeth elegantly placed her lipstick in her tiny handbag. And what's weird about here is, like, I remember thinking this when I wrote it. Just finishing coating her lips. Almost sounds like a tongue twister, but maybe not. I'm going to take out in. Just finishing coating her lips rose red. So there we go. I wasn't going to have it just finishing painting, but the two ing words together do sound kind of strange. Let's just reword the whole sentence. So yeah, I'm going to definitely change this to just Elizabeth finished coating her lips rose red, then elegantly placed her lipstick in her tiny, there we go, in her tiny handbag. So voila, problem solved. So see this, using this ing words, I can find places where there's like weird things like that. So it's useful. Okay, I'm looking for its most useful function. I'm trying to find a place where this happens, and it's what you want to do is as you're glancing over your ing words, look at the words right in front of it and see if you see a weak verb. So for example here, do comes, this had and do come before something. And then, so what's the real thing she's doing is she's protecting. So I could just change it to, she had to protect him from making a fool of himself. But now I'm going to leave it like that. So another way I can find this problem in this sentence, but we found it in another function, but here this way can be found too, is feeling and boasting. So Zoe could invite guests. Let me see here. It was a house Zoe could invite guests to without feeling boastful. So I could change that. Here's an example, doing and mixing. So the two parts separated by a glass wall were designed in such a way for the person doing the mixing could just simply be for the person mixing. So in this case, the weak verb that came before the ing word was another ing word. And so bam, that fixes it. In this case here, I want to change this to and reverberate it off the walls. And the reason why is because it sounds better, but two, the two things really can't be happening simultaneously because it takes time for the sound to travel. Anyway, technically it just sounds better that way. So I don't want to have too many ing words, so that's one I can easily remove. Right, real quickly from the manual, here's an example where you can easily, when you find these, I usually don't make these mistakes, so I couldn't find any in my writing, so I had to find it somewhere else. Is you have a weak verb before the ing words here. Was and was. So he was hitting the punching bag so hard it was rattling the ceiling. I notice people do that a lot, but it can easily be changed to he hit the punching bag so hard it rattled the ceiling. And it's actually stronger than this here. So there you go. Right, so there's some of the different ways to use this function, the ing function, to make your writing stronger. So here's an example here. I just found one, actually. She was singing more than loud enough. She sang more than loud enough. And actually doesn't change the meaning in this case. So there you go. So hopefully as you can see, this function will really help you quickly find these places where you might have abused using too many ing words as a participle phrase at the this was where you find participle phrases at the beginning, but this is the participle phrases at the end of a sentence or the middle of a sentence. And you can see if you can just easily change it to ed and use the word and sometimes that makes it stronger. Or you can easily find those times where you've used ing incorrectly because the two events can't happen at the same time, or it doesn't make logical sense. So there you go.